What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about basically catch up as we get up, not the food, like the actual act of catching up with all the cards that have been released, as I tie up some loose ends from Dimension Force and talk about some of the new insane cards that the Albaz archetype, or lore, however you want to look at that. I mean, there's a bunch of different archetypes that span off of it, are getting, including the insane new card that we just saw, Branded Exile, that was released earlier today. It's essentially a better version of Branded in Red, which came out in Dawn of Majesty. So we're going to jump into the whole thing and take a look at these cards. We'll take a look at the branded stuff a little bit later towards the end, because there are a few other loose ends that I wanted to kind of cover first. But before I get super into that, I did just want to quickly touch on a new series we have coming up called Time Chronicles. It's a little bit behind where I wanted it to be because I hit a few snags with recording, and it's going to be probably like a week or so. But with the announcement of the Time Wizard format for Yu-Gi-Oh, I thought it'd be really cool to take a look at some of those previous formats, what decks were relevant, why they were relevant, and do like an in-depth breakdown, similar to like some of the other series you've seen, like A History of Yu-Gi-Oh, but a little bit more focused on just the specific formats and sort of the interactions within those formats, why things got hit, and all of that. So if you guys have any suggestions for that and things you'd like to see in the Time Wizard format for the Time Chronicles series, please let me know in the comments down below. I will take those into advisement. We're going to start off by taking a look at 2015's Necros format, and I'd like to say it would be optimistic to think that the first episode could be released at the end of this week, but I'm going to go ahead and say probably sometime early next week, just being realistic with the time constraints. But without further ado, I do want to jump into the actual video for today. If you guys do enjoy the content, please hit the like button and subscribe. It really does help a ton and helps me to, get the word out there, notoriety, continue making the videos and all of that. So yeah, I really do appreciate that. And obviously, if you are subscribed and you want to be notified when new videos come up, you can click the bell icon and that will do that for you. So jumping into the new cards that we're starting off with here, I think Changshi the Taoist is going to be the first one we take a look at, and this is actually in Dimension Force. It's a level 6 dark zombie monster. During the main phase, you can send one zombie monster from your hand or deck to the graveyard. If this card is banished, you can banish one zombie from your graveyard, special summon this card, but place it on the bottom of the deck when it leaves the field. Being a level 6 obviously means you can't just like summon this and mill something. However, that banish effect is actually really neat. It works with things like Gold Sarcophagus, but it also works with a lot of new zombie cards that either banish zombies from grave for cost or banish zombies as part of an effect resolution, things like the Shiranui cards that you can use for synchros, and this can't miss timing because it is an optional if trigger effect. So being able to banish a zombie to special it is a really cool interaction, but being able to mill a zombie from the deck to the grave with no real restrictions is obviously super strong for zombies as a whole. You can trigger things like Necroworld Banshee and Glow Up Bloom. You can also mill things like Shiranui Spectral Sword or Mizuki to use their effects. I don't think I really have to break down too much why this is a really cool utility piece for zombies. It does suck that it is a level 6, but I understand the reasoning behind those restrictions, and I think there will be a place for it. I'm just not exactly sure when or where. It's a neat card to keep an eye on, though. It obviously has the art style that's going to appeal to some people for, reasons, and I think that it's going to be a pretty cool card to have if you're a zombie player or are interested perhaps in playing zombies going forward. I do think a piece of support like this is really neat just because it's balanced, but it's strong, and finding that balance in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not super common, especially because a lot of the cards that come out just power creep previous cards. I do worry this card could be looked at as good, but not good enough, but I guess we will see what people end up doing with it. I do like it on the surface, and I do think it's pretty easy to be able to trigger its abilities. So let's take a look at Ice Jade Curse. This is another one-off Ice Jade support. Obviously, they got a lot of their support in Burst of Destiny, and they'll be getting a lot more support in Battle of Chaos, which comes out. I think the deck has a lot of really cool interactions with itself and other water cards. I'm really interested to see what type of things can be put together with it. I'm actually thinking about doing a full sort of deep dive, no pun intended, into the deck because I've been playing it with Mermails as an engine, and I think there's a lot of really cool synergy there. Ice Jade Curse does appear to be a Floodgate-esque card. While both an Ice Jade monster and Ice Jade Depth's Indian Cradle are on the field, your opponent cannot activate the effects of monsters on the field that were summoned this turn. When a monster or monsters is destroyed by battle involving your Ice Jade monster, you can target one of those destroyed monsters and inflict damage to your opponent equal to its original attack. So the added burn is cute. It seems very Hidden Temples of Necro Valley-ish in terms of that card requiring both a Gravekeeper and their field spell. Obviously, this card doesn't pop itself if you don't control either of those like Hidden Temples does, so it's a little bit less ineffective in that regard. Not really sure off the top of my head whether or not it's going to be a huge piece for the deck, but considering the Cradle is good and it's not hard to have an Ice Jade monster on the field, it can sort of shut the opponent down a bit. It's a lose one turn that's searchable in a way and doesn't require them to be in defense position, so it's definitely a really neat card to keep an eye on. I don't know whether or not it's going to be like a solution for Ice Jade, but it's a neat option to have, and certainly being able to set up a strong board and then prevent the opponent from breaking through that board as easily is definitely a cool thing to consider. Warrock Medium had some people hyped a little bit earlier this week, and in fairness, it is a really good card. It's actually the first OCG card that came out on that side for Warrocks, and as usual, they kind of crush it with the support much better than Konami TCG seems to do. While an opponent controls a special summon monster and you control a level 7 or higher Warrock monster, neither player can activate the effects of monsters on the field during main phase 1. During the main phase, you can set one Warrock spell or trap directly from your deck, except this card. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn, except warrior monsters, even if this card leaves the field. Obviously, getting a level 7 Warrock out isn't the easiest thing in the world to do, but they do have cards that allow themselves to special, and this does sort of help you to focus on your battle phase effects because your opponent's main phase is essentially a moot for them with things that are on the field. It's just that this is definitely outable pretty easily, and Warrocks as a whole don't have any strong protection, negation, anything like that. They're very like aggro, battle heavy. Would have been great maybe 12 years ago as a deck, but this does help them to get a little bit more consistency and a little bit more, I don't want to say oppression on the opponent, but certainly balances out their approach a bit where you're not hurt as much by going to the battle phase because the main phase is something you're taking away from them. I don't know though, it's still battle reliant as a whole, and I think the deck would need some really broken cards and or a total strategy rework to really be effective at that level. Amphibious Bugroth MK2 is a really neat card because it's throwback to the Legendary Ocean support. It's a level 5 water machine. Obviously, if Legendary Ocean is on the field, it would be reduced to a level 4, so you could summon it straight up. While Umi is not on the field, this card gains 700 attack. Also, it cannot attack directly. If Umi is on the field, you can target one face-up non-water monster, destroy it. You can only use this effect once per turn. So, honestly, I think it's a little too restrictive. I think if it didn't have that first restriction, it actually might be a decent card for water decks, especially with all the new Umi support we got in the upcoming set that people are definitely excited about because it gives it a lot more option as a strategy. So if this was a level 4, you could summon that gained 700 attack and wasn't out to certain things, and of course balanced by the fact that you have to control Umi or some variation of it. It might have been a really good utility card for water decks, but as it is now, it's okay. It's just way too restrictive. Basically, you're going to have to hard summon this, and it doesn't get the boost, and there's just other cards that are going to be able to do the same thing better. I don't think it's that great, unfortunately, but it would have been a really neat, unique piece of support if they didn't add that restriction about needing Umi to not be on the field in order to gain those boosts. I think even if it was just, if Umi's on the field, this card gets 700 attack and can attack directly, it would have been a lot better and definitely match some of the current power in the game without being, broken to the point of being any kind of a real problem. Cute card, nice throwback to historical support, but it's not winning me over. Cross Exclusion was way earlier this past week. Counter Trap, when your opponent activates a monster effect in the hand, negate the activation. Then if your opponent has a card in the hand, they discard one card. It's cute. It's definitely not a terrible card, but I do feel like there are other cards that do pretty much what this does better. Things like Debunk were brought up, but just in general, Solemn Strike is a card that can do, much more controlled monster negation. The discard on the opponent is solid, but this has a much smaller window of activation, and so I don't know that it's going to be something you'd go to. I suppose it's cute, and if it was somehow searchable, maybe you'd have ways to maneuver it and make it work, but as a whole, it's just a nice little throwback, and honestly kind of a teaser for people that are huge fans of X-Sabers, thinking they might get some new X-Saber support. Maybe that'll be on the horizon. I definitely think it would be a cool thing to see for fans of that archetype. Flip Jar. Yeah, this one was just kind of I wasn't going to make its own video for or anything. Level 3 Earth Rock. Change as many other monsters on the field as possible to face down defense position. Then return as many face-up spells or traps on the field as possible to the hand. Then each player can set spells or traps in their hand up to the number of cards. It's cute. I don't see any immediate application for it, though I do suppose it is a way to out Imperial Order, which everyone seems to have themselves in a twist over these days. It's a neat card. It's a jar card. It's cool for what it is, I guess, but I don't think it's going to see any type of relevant play. Now, on to the meat and potatoes of the video. Really, Branded Exile and the Branded Forfeiture, both new cards, and both are pretty solid. Branded Exile says target a Despia monster or a level 8 or higher fusion monster in your graveyard. Special summon it, then you can apply the following effect. Fusion summon one level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from either field. So as if, the Branded Archetype didn't have enough already, they've now given it a fusion spell that's essentially super poly, but without the benefit of your opponent not being able to respond. And we know that that deck has so many different things it can go into, but it's also not reliant on the opponent. You don't have to use your opponent's monsters. You can banish monsters on your own field, and it's just a really good, solid piece of support that is searchable, that allows the deck to continue to fusion ladder. There's nothing bad to say about this card. It's just a better version of Branded in red, and continues to give that deck even more support with the structure deck coming out, with this card coming out. It's just really, really strong. I don't know the numbers where you'd play it, but there's no reason not to play this, especially as a searchable, removable trap that you can get back from grave or deck to your hand with your different branded cards. So yeah, this is a huge boost for those decks that may not have needed it at this point with the amount of hype we're seeing behind Branded Fusion, but this is a really, really solid card. And if you don't have your Alubers already, unfortunately, I think you might have missed the boat on that, but it's still going to be interesting to see how this and the other branded cards affect the price of those already existing Despia cards that are out now. And lastly, Branded Forfeiture is a normal spell. Target one fusion monster you control and one monster your opponent controls that was summoned from the extra deck. Return them to the deck. During the end phase of this turn, each player can special summon one fusion monster from their extra deck that lists Fallen of Albaz as material. So it's not a quick play spell or a trap, so it's pretty slow in terms of its activation window. However, if you were playing like, you can put a fusion monster out pretty easily, use its effect, and then be able to bounce it back, something that the opponent has. And that end phase ability to special summon a different fusion monster does give you some options within the Albaz deck. I could see this being really trolly in like mirror matches and stuff, and making mirror matches even more miserable. I actually don't know whether or not this one is going to end up seeing play. I haven't really had a chance to do any experimentation with Despia since these cards were announced, and I'm honestly a little bit behind with that deck as a whole, but I do think that it is a neat piece of support. It does pale in comparison, obviously, to Branded Exile, but it's still a really cool card, and Branded now has a huge array of tools at their disposal, so it's going to be really interesting to see what type of impact that has on our TCG meta when Dimension Force hits, and of course when the Albaz structure deck comes out with it. So that's going to do it for today's video. Let me know what you guys think of the cards we discussed. Again, just a quick reminder, the Time Wizard Chronicles series is going to be starting up pretty soon, and I'm really open to suggestions. People want to learn more about previous formats, decks that were relevant in previous formats, or maybe just like looking for ideas for your locals to host different format events. So leave the comments down below on that. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video, and let me know what you think about the new cards. You think any of the branded stuff's going to be relevant? Any of the one-offs that sort of just kind of warranted being put in their own video, catch your eye or catch your interest? Let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.